Esteemed SICHL GMs, you know who I am. You know who these guys are. You know what this is. Why do I even bother with an intro? Tradition. What can I say? Welcome. Welcome. We are in the beginnings of another wonderful, amazing, frustrating if the Schooners win SICHL season. Preseason, of course, the one part of the season you all know and love is almost over. Got the waiver wire coming, and opening night is upon us, which means we have to talk about which teams we think are going to be good, which teams we think are going to be bad, and which teams just aren't worth talking about, but we're going to talk about them anyway. With me, of course, I am Henry Skey, GM of the Hamburg Gladiators. With me is our fearless, wonderful, indomitable, indubitable, indefatigable commissioner, Mark McRae, GM of the Fredericton Express. There we go. Nice. We can edit out that, right?
Of course, and, yeah. You know, I'm going to edit heavily.
Hopefully not too much, but quite a bit. Also with us, everyone's favorite GM right now, just the best guy. Nobody is annoyed with the moves he's making. Nobody is sad that he's won 2 Continental Cups in a row. The Triple H of the SICHL, he's taken the title away from Guy. Your GM of the Nova Scotia Schooners, Eric Schneider. Eric, is what I said true?
100%. Is that in any dispute at this point?
I thought you were going to ask if it's an insult, and the answer is absolutely not.
That's a
Only
compliment.
if an insult would be, do you like winning?
I love winning. Is that not obvious by now? I'm going to continue winning.
He's a madman, everyone. He cannot be stopped. But will he appear at the top of the SICHL preseason power rankings video and list if you don't feel like watching a video? And if you're not watching the video, why not? You should be watching the video. Ian puts all the work into his podcast or his podcast. Norm puts in some work into his ranty videos, which I want to see every week, basically. We have Gary and Jeff doing video content once in a while. You should watch this video. And if you are, I apologize for ranting at you. Really, I'm ranting at everybody else that's not watching, which is no one. Gentlemen, no bells and whistles this year. We're just happy to make this happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the list as usual. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way to the top. And we'll talk about each team's strengths, weaknesses, surprises, prognostications, predictions, foreshadowings, etc. until we are done. And hopefully this won't take 3 hours because for Mark, it's already very late. And for Eric and I, it's a school night. So perfect timing because now Eric has to deal with something.
Eric is already having a child show up in the first 5 minutes this year.
Didn't happen until way later on.
Which is a record. Yeah, it was way later last year.
Season. All right, Mark. So at deadline, and now we have. We still have 29 teams in the league. At 29th, it's not the Hamburg Gladiators. At 29th, I can't believe there's a few teams worse than mine, including a real notable one that shocked me. Eric, the worst team in the league is the Boston Colonials. Poor Gary. Now, I think it's by design. But Eric, tell me why is Boston so bad? And are they that much more bad than the other bad teams?
Boston is significantly terrible. They have the second worst offense, the third worst defense, and the very absolutely worst goaltending in the entire league. And they head up what I affectionately term, again, the dumpster tier of teams. And this season, there are only 2 dumpster tier teams. So look forward to the next one.
What I love about Boston is they have 400 rated defensemen. I always it's not just like Boston doesn't necessarily have a lot of players. They have a lot of players. But unfortunately, you can't play 14 defensemen at once, Mark. Otherwise, they'd be unstoppable. No one would be able to get around them.
No, well, I'm checking my notes here. I think they signed one notable defenseman in UFA, Artem Zub, for $14.8 million.
Child's play.
Made a huge splash in free agency. What are my other notes here on Boston? Tim Stützle is making his rookie season debut.
Exciting, yeah.
Probably will be their leading scorer, which is not great. Though he did just recently trade for Mike Hoffman, interestingly, who's a UFA, which I'm guessing is going to be his FP, his franchise player. I can only imagine. or it's Trader Gary. Maybe he's just picking him up in order that he can flip him later. Because Hoffman is basically the only tradable asset. I mean, he's got Okposo is the only other sort of veteran, decent player on the team. But Okposo is his current FP, so can't be traded.
I always get nervous as a fellow basement dweller when teams like the Steelhawks or the Colonials or whatever makes a bunch of trades, because then I think, what are they up to? Eric, what is Gary up to here?
Gary's in it for the long haul. He's made that pretty clear through this rebuild that he's got his sights set on the 2023 and beyond drafts. Everything else that happens between now and then is inconsequential.
I know that feeling very well. That is your ranked 29th team. Gary, you probably knew it was coming. If you didn't, I'm sorry for letting you know. But we have to move on, everyone. We have to move on. We don't have all day to talk about the Boston Colonials. And I don't think we have all day to talk about the Hamilton Steelhawks, although, if a certain GM had his way, maybe we would talk about the Steelhawks all day. Number 28 is the Hamilton. Sorry. Number 28 is the Hamilton Steelhawks, who are only slightly better than Boston. We know that they have a mountain of draft picks, and I mean, I'm genuinely concerned as to how they got this many draft picks. But they're stocking up to the point where I'm on a widescreen, and all his draft picks still don't fit on my screen properly with 2022. Mark, what do you make of what Hamilton is doing these days?
Well, I think Chris is going to need all those draft picks because other than I'm looking at Cam York, Jamie Drysdale looking like franchise cornerstones. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, just a lot of things, a lot of spare parts that he's going to have to, like Casey McSmith there is not, to me, is not the goalie of the future.
I can tell you he's not.
Yeah.
With some confidence.
If that's his current best young goalie, and he's not even that young. He's going to need to continue to draft for a while.
Eric, he doesn't have a ton in the cupboard, so it makes sense that he has a lot of draft picks because he doesn't have a lot of unrated forwards and defensemen, and he currently has no rated goalies. So with the upcoming draft, and he only has 55 players, at the upcoming draft, do you see him targeting a goalie early, maybe the first or second round pick?
It's hard to get a gauge on him, just given that he's relatively new to the league compared to most of the rest of our folks. Mm-hmm. So far, he's shown a penchant for drafting defensemen. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he continues to just pile on the back end. It would certainly behoove him to add a goaltender to the mix at some point. Ideally, one that he didn't acquire in free agency, because those are all mine.
All of them.
And actually, they're all Don's. That's a spoiler alert. The big thing that surprised me with Piketty here is these moves he made in the offseason to get Gallagher and Marchessault. Interesting, odd moves. They do help him squeak out from that last place spot. Give him a slightly better forward group. He has the absolute worst dumpster defense in the entire league and among the worst goaltending. But just to put this in perspective, our dumpster tier, the gap between Hamilton and our 27th place team is the single largest gap anywhere in these rankings. So they are Hamilton, that much worse than the absolute worst other teams in the entire league.
So Hamilton and Boston really are in a league of their own.
They shouldn't win a single game between the two of them.
And there's no crying in the SICHL.
I don't think they would do that well in the GHA. Like these teams, they literally are. They're in a whole other league. I'm not sure what league it is, but it's not an SICHL affiliated league.
Mark, may I suggest humbly that we add relegation as a mechanic?
Oh God, no, please.
Well, now that Henry's finally out of the basement, maybe.
Oh yeah, that's right. No, good idea. Good idea. Yeah, let's definitely do that. I will say though, this has to be the best scoring lineup of a terrible team I've seen. They do have a lot of players, oddly enough, that can score. So just expect a lot of goals in their season, I would guess. And then some tradable assets, maybe, but he probably doesn't want to part with them. But a lot of teams would take Gallagher and Marchessault for sure. Especially Marchessault at $4 million, that's a hell of a deal. So he could, and we know Chris is not afraid to wheel and deal.
No, but consider this: as bad as this team is, what do they look like once they have traded those guys?
I can't even imagine.
Is it possible to get negative points in the CCHL?
No.
Do the gold points count as negative points? I guess it depends on which part of the.
It's more of a philosophical question, guys. Let's not overthink this.
Well, that's.
I mean, the only thing I can see that he's added these guys is that he knows that he's got to win games at the end of the season after he's eliminated, right?
Yes.
The gold standard, and it has added an interesting element to the SICHL season. Mm-hmm. Speaking of an interesting element to the SICHL season, I hate to see the Dublin Shamrocks so low after their amazing run last year. Ryan is the least boring GM in the history of the SICHL. He is never irrelevant, up or down. He wheels and deals. He's a friendly guy. He embraces the spirit of the league. And there's Eva with another appearance.
Say good night.
Good night, Eva.
Good night, everybody in the league. Can you say, go Schooners?
What? Yeah.
Betrayal.
Even your own daughter knows not to cheer for the Schooners at this point.
No, she loves the Colonials.
No, she does not love the Colonials. She loves the Schooners. Say, go Schooners.
Go Schooners.
There it is. That's my girl. All right. You made Daddy proud. Okay. Have a good sleep.
Night, Eva.
Bye-bye. You say good night. All right.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, Eva may have stolen Ryan's thunder, but thankfully Ryan doesn't have a lot of thunder this year. So, Mark, what's up with the Shamrocks? They have 1 million players. They're no good again, but I bet they still do. He has Jack Campbell. Okay. Is it totally insane to think that the Shamrocks could squeeze into the 8th playoff spot this year?
I mean, knowing with this roster, no, I don't think they have a chance. But knowing Ryan, possibly. I mean, I also, when I saw Dublin down this low, I was like, wait a second. They beat the Reykjavik Riders in the playoffs last season. They beat the Riders. They knocked the Riders out of. They not only did they make the playoffs, they knocked the Riders out. And now they're just above dumpster fire, apparently.
Ryan, you are Mephistopheles, potentially on a bender. I don't understand. Yeah, he made the playoffs, and also he beat one of the best teams in the league in the playoffs last year. Eric, what do you make of the Shamrocks? Can the Shamrocks be made of an opinion?
My previous favorite team in the entire league until Ryan's massive betrayal last season. The Shamrocks are the single biggest drop from last year's preseason rankings.
Oh my goodness!
Down 12 spots. They were
wow.
15th last year.
Wow.
And I really don't know what to make of this, other than that the thing I love most about Ryan is how unpredictable this team always is. So this is really, if you think about it, true to form. The only thing that would have been weirder is if they'd ended up 15 spots higher than last season and come into this as the absolute undisputed favorite. And no offense, you don't have the parts for that to have ever happened. So Godspeed, Ryan. I don't know what to say beyond that.
I'm not sure what to say either, because so he doesn't have a lot of draft picks, if any, which is always scary for a team this low. But he also does have a lot of unrated prospects. Unfortunately, they're all like really late rounds, so Ryan's going to really have to land some gems there. However, he has two goalies that will rate very well next year. He's not going to be able to trade one because unless he makes it the FP, but he does have a few tradable assets. Mark, do you see him maybe doing that and restocking the cupboard?
I mean, I guess we should mention former Schooner Frederick Anderson is going to look great for him next year if he hangs on to him at $17.5 million.
That Schooner's pedigree, I tell you.
And he was a Schooner for all of 3 minutes. Backstrom is a great player, former Express player. I mean, there are some, like the veterans, like Patrick Marleau, I could see him trading him.
Yeah,
because everybody likes a 99 experience, 99 leadership guy in the playoffs.
Not many of those.
And who else do I see in this team that's any good? Well, basically anybody, and it's Ryan, so there's going to be trades.
If it wasn't Ryan, I would be worried. It is Ryan. I am not worried. I am intrigued. He is the kind of person that makes writing the biweekly power rankings a little bit easier because I'm never at a loss as to what to say about him. So Ryan, welcome back. We're happy to have you again. We are always happy to have you. You are ranked number 27, but not in our hearts. Number 26. Let's move on. Eric, this is a bit of a surprise. We have Norm's Fire Ants at number 26. What happened to the Fire Ants, Eric?
A little bit of a shocker. I think the single biggest thing that does them in this year versus previous is their goaltending.
Okay.
They're heading into this with, we're going to go with Vladar, but I believe he actually pronounces his name Vladash.
Okay.
In real life, yeah, go figure. But regardless of how you say his name, he's not a particularly good SICHL goalie. That may change for next year. He's playing pretty well. He's got a few other really interesting up-and-comers like Dostal and Demchenko. Kaskazoo maybe better at some point too. The other thing that does him in is his over-reliance on offensive defensemen. Sam Girard and Shea Theodore are both perpetually underrated players in the SICHL because
Shea Theodore's DF is 58.
I know, it's heinous. And Girard's is 69. And these are two guys that excel at even strength. They're transition players, but the sim hates that. Our re-rates guy hates that. So he suffers.
Wow.
And, Norm's, the one thing he's got is a bright light here with his forward group. Pavelski and Stamkos should both light it up for him this season. And Timo Meier and Petr Laine are on pace for pretty darn good re-rates for next season.
Batherson too. So Mark, we don't necessarily think that Norm is going to be down here for long.
No, I have in my notes. I have two notes: Stamkos, franchise player or trade bait? ? And no defenseman to speak of. But otherwise, 22 is looking like a better year. Like I see Drake, Batherson, Patrick Laine's got to get better, doesn't he? So Dylan Cousins, like there's some people who are on the cusp of probably getting a good rate next year. So I can see the Fire Ants turning it, if he hangs on to Stamkos, makes him his FP next year, he could be a playoff team again next year. But this is probably as bad as I've seen the Fire Ants since they've been the Fire Ants.
I can't wait for Norm's reactionary video again. Norm, it's not us saying this, it's the cold hard numbers, and we are the medium through which the numbers speak. My last note is I do love how he has a player called Michael McLeod, which sort of this is the most like Scottish name generator name I've ever heard in my life. So I like that. Or I guess it would be MAC, wouldn't it? Is it MC that's generally Irish and MAC is Scottish, or is it the other way around?
It can go either way.
I suppose you would know, Mark McCray. All right. Well, that's very good. Best of luck, Norm. I'm not worried about you because for some reason I am one spot better than you. I have no idea, boys. Finally, we get to talk about my team. It's been forever. Usually I'm ready to talk about me right away. One thing I am really concerned about is last year Seattle was like worse than me, and now all of a sudden they're like way better than me. But we'll get to Seattle eventually. Guys, what's up with my team? What am I doing? Tell me what. No, please tell me what I'm doing.
It's pretty fun. Henry's is the first team in our rankings that actually improved their standing from last year.
Yay! Finally. It only
more than one.
4 years to get slightly better.
Yeah, and you did it largely on the strength of your defensive re-rates.
Yes.
So one Charlie Mcavoy is probably responsible for both of those position changes. In all honesty, great player, great young player. I mean, there are a lot of especially analytics folks out there that think he's a top 5 defenseman in the entire other league.
Woohoo.
He's not rated that way in our league, but he's still a very good young defenseman. Unfortunately for you, you suffer some of the pitfalls of offensive defensemen like Norm does with one Rasmus Dahlin.
Yeah, he's not a very good D rate.
Is also a 58 defense.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That one's slightly more warranted than Theodore's, if I'm being honest, but he's still definitely underrated. So that's a shame. But your goaltending improved marginally as well. Jeremy Swayman, pretty solid-looking young defenseman for a certain McCray's favorite young.
I feel gross cheering for Mark's team, but I basically have to at this point.
I kind of do. You got a lot bound up in their future. And then a certain Stahl whom was gifted to you for pennies on the dollar last season by a benevolent neighboring SICHL team, re-rated with just a massive 76 OV. Crazy numbers across the board, and on pace to do another big re-rate. So that was a good franchise player for you. You're welcome.
Oh, thank you, Mark. What do you think? I'm tickled pink to be even slightly rated. I still think it's a non-playoff year, but hopefully one of the last few non-playoff years.
I
Mark,
think
what do you
so.
think?
I mean, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on finally having something decent to talk about.
Yay!
It's been, much as we love beating up on you every year, I think it's good to see you trying. My first note is closet Bruins fan ? Because Mcavoy is your future. Mcavoy, I don't know if you've been watching him at all this year, but especially the last couple of games, he is looking every penny of that new contract he signed in the other league.
Fantastic. That is good to hear.
And more. Swayman also probably looking like a decent chance to be your starter, though Eric's goalie has just started skating in real life, so we'll see what happens with their long term. But one note I have about the Gladiators they might want to look at, he doesn't seem to have an obvious franchise player available, franchise player target for next season, so he may want to pick up a UFA. And I have another question mark on here. Why did he sign Chris Russell to 2 years?
Oh, well,
for $11.3 million.
Don't worry.
A team. Wait a second. This is back up to my previous point. He has no FP target. He has no player on an expiring contract, and he signed a UFA to a 2-year, $11.3 million contract. Why would he do that?
So one of the reasons is that I was way below the salary floor last year by quite a bit. And so I sort of thought I need to overpay a couple of defensemen to get up. And I'm happy to report, above the salary floor for the first time since it has been implemented. So that was my reasoning behind that. He hasn't played that many games, so I may have the worst contract ever next year, even worse than Dadonov. But thankfully, it's only for one more year. This year is a bit of a throwaway. This year it was to get above the floor. Next year, I will be shaking my head and wondering what I was thinking.
Sure.
May I humbly suggest just take the penalty next year?
I might. We'll see. We'll see. I'm no stranger to buying out bad players. That's for sure.
I mean, you're not one of the teams that has the most cash laying around. You're doing okay.
You're doing better than me.
I have something. I haven't been penalized yet for not hitting the cap floor, or maybe I haven't.
That's a good reminder. We're just gonna have to make sure that we go back through last year's finances.
Good. Yes, I should be penalized for my poor financial decisions, just like in real life.
Mike, right on it.
Okay, good. Mike's watching this, right?
Mike's the bad cop, right? So any of the bad news is good. Comes from Mike.
That's a good look for you guys. When he's got to grow a mustache. Let's move on. Thank you all for the kind words. And I'm looking forward to the draft next year, as always, but extra next year. Eric, who do we have at number 24?
We have Chris Baker's Toronto Metropolitans. And
can't seem to get out of here, can they? They can't seem to get out of the ditch just yet.
And it's actually worse than it was last year. They took a pretty big tumble, 8 points off last year's ranking at 16. And they are very much a live by the sword, die by the sword team, because that's almost entirely due to Carey Price's tumble in the ratings.
Yes.
They were the, let me see here, last season they were the 5th highest ranked goaltending group, and this season they are the 21st.
Oof, that's quite a tumble. So that's largely the reason for the dip.
Almost entirely. Their defense is largely unchanged. Their forward group is slightly worse. It's really all goaltending.
Oof. At least they have all their now, Mark. Toronto has to be the only team that has every single one of their picks for the next 5 years, and only their picks for the next 5 years. It's almost like their page has been reverted back to a default. So Chris has not really gotten onto the trading game just yet.
Well, I'm glad he's holding on to his picks. I mean, he is one of the Toronto area GM, so we're fully expecting him to make an appearance at the live draft and summit in Toronto next August. Right. I mean, it's only a 15-minute drive, so he should be able to make it. But yeah, I agree on Carey Price. That's my first note on him. Carey Price needs to come back from whatever ails him and just have an all-star year to be a franchise player for him next year. Torrey Krug has been looking good in that other league early, so things could be looking up there. But otherwise, like I look at his forwards. I mean, I like JVR. He's a sneaky. Well, I don't like JVR, which means I think he's actually one of those sneaky half decent players, but he's a middle six forward for me all day long. So if he's your leading scorer, yeah, it's not a great group.
Not a ton of young blue chip talent, but also a lot of players that like could rate highly next year, like Liljegren.
Barrett Hayton's an interesting.
Barrett Hayton. I mean, like, as you know, you got the Arizona situation, which doesn't seem to ever help. But he's got some pieces there. What a peculiar roster! I can't quite get a handle on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like why did we pick up Corey Perry and Wayne Simmons?
Perhaps he thinks he's gonna make the playoffs. Who knows? Or like me, maybe he was very concerned about being financially responsible to be irresponsible enough to get to the cap floor.
Or
that could be a
hot
thing.
Take. Maybe he just wants to dangle them in the waiver draft.
What? Oh. No, that would never. Oh, that waiver draft! I cannot wait. I am excited once again. Don't worry, Eric and I haven't made any deals on that just yet.
My hands are clean.
Okay, yeah, well that's great. That is Toronto. Toronto is a real question mark. Slightly better than me, but in a very stranger in a strange land. Let's move on. Eric, we have at number 23. We have the Stockholm Cougars, who have improved slightly. They traded away a lot to get Lafreniere, which may not work out long term, but it's a little early to say. What do you make of the Cougars?
They had some interesting re-rates, and he's following his path. Tom knows what he's doing here. This is a patient. I don't know if he would necessarily say rebuild. I think retool is probably more the vernacular he's thinking about, because it's not like he took it right down to studs. He kept some important kind of middle-aged pieces like a Sorokin, 25. That's not, fresh as a daisy, as it were, in SICHL years.
Right.
But this is the guy that traded Barkov, right? Like, there's no two ways about it. So he's clearly doing something very different there. But improved across the board, slight improvement to his defense, up 2 places from last year, and significant improvement to both forward and goaltending, 5 and 6 spots, respectively speaking. So, we'll see. They're at the top of the group that I dub outside looking in, along with our next team, but they're head and shoulders above some of the bottom teams like Hamburg and Philly. So we'll see. They could do some damage.
I like how you bring up goaltending, Mark. It appears his goaltenders have had a bit of a tumble, and they appear to be a little tired of preseason.
Yeah. They're he's starting the season with a few banged up goalies, but it's not looking to me like a playoff year for the Cougars, if I may be so bold to suggest. They're probably going to be on the outside looking in. Though I do like Lafreniere a bit, though I think I like Luke Hughes better, who we picked up in the most recent draft. I think that's going to be a cornerstone for the Cougars going forward. He's got a lot of UFAs. Probably Josh Bailey is his best franchise player target. But so definitely a chance for renewal if all these expiring contracts are going to go away. He may have a chance to actually kind of rebuild a little harder for a couple of years.
Yeah, Tom is a kind of a mix between like Toronto and Hamilton. I feel like he's got another peculiar, strange mix. He's got a lot of rated players. Which is always, hey, it's always good to have more coals in the fire. And yeah, I think Tom will be patient. He's been in the league long enough to know, when it's time to sort of hit the accelerator or hit the brake. So yeah, I think that is an accurate statement as to where Stockholm is. Of course, what I'm looking forward to is the first two, basically the first real power rankings after the first 2 weeks, because that's the best. Because there's always some team that we've already talked about that is going to win 4 or 5 in a row, and I'm going to put them number one. It'll be the only time they're number one for the season. I always look forward to that. Eric, what's the next tier? So we finished now. No, we haven't finished. We have one more. We have one more on the outside looking in, but they have improved. Boy, I hope the Tigers make the playoffs one of these days. Mark, is this Sheetal's year to make the playoffs? What do we think about the Tigers? Chicago Tigers coming in at number 22.
I mean, looking at their team, they're like Logan Couture is a solid guy forever. Like, just keep re-signing him. I mean, I live in the East Coast. I definitely suffer from the East Coast bias heavily. Logan Couture just sneakily is really good all the time out there in the other league.
Schooners draft pick.
I have a note here that he picked up PK Subban for a lot of money, which is the type of move you make when you think that you are going to be somewhat competitive. Troy Terry's on this team. Pretty hot young player right now.
Schooners draft pick.
He's got Quentin Byfield, Jake Neighbors coming up. Like, Chicago is definitely on the rise. I don't know. I mean, picking up Subban to me, again, says that he thinks he can do something. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but he's definitely moving in the right direction, is what I would say.
Eric, how much do you think with the gold points now, how much do you think that has changed the league, at least when it comes to the bottom feeders? Because we've talked now about 6 or 7 teams, and almost every single one of them has some big signing that they never would have done before. So clearly that is having an impact on how GMs have built their rosters a little bit. No? I don't know. You tell me. It's a leading question.
It is indeed. I am very firmly in Camp McInnes on this particular issue. Okay. I would argue that the salary floor probably has a little bit more to do with these signings than concern about getting points at the end of the season.
Okay.
I would say teams that are on this outside looking in category, if they're looking at stocking up on those types of guys, it's probably more for trade bait and hitting the floor than anything else. Because realistically, getting those guys at the start of the season just helps them suck less now when they should be sucking more for the gold rule to be super effective.
Well, they may not play them though, right? I mean, they could scratch them until it's possible time, right?
And ruin their MO, which would indicate a profound misunderstanding of how the sim works. But it's possible. I would suggest.
Does anybody know how the sim works?
I can't wait until you're bad.
I don't think I know how the sim works.
We get me ranked at number 1 or 2 to talk about you ranked 27 or 28. Oh my goodness!
Delightful. Dream on, my friend. The Tigers are. I said that Dublin was no longer my favorite team. The Tigers are my new favorite team.
Oh,
I love this group that SICHL has been putting together with the utmost patience. He's been waiting for Kevin Fiala and Alex Winberg to show that promise for ages. He's been sitting on Josh Norris for a bit. Troy Terry was a very cagey pickup. I deeply regret letting him go. Rasmus Asplund is having a pretty solid season. Devin Paves, I tried so hard to pry him away from SICHL the last couple of seasons, and he saw right through it, hung on to him. That guy is he's probably he's at least a number 1 defenseman on 25 other league teams. And I think he's probably a top 10 defenseman in the entire league. He's unreal.
That may be one of the best contracts in the league, too. He's at $1 million for the next 3 years. Pretty good.
It's nuts.
Pretty good.
If he can solve his goaltending issue and milk those re-rates for all they're worth next season, I think he's a playoff team easily.
Mark, SICHL only has 3 goalies. I thought I was sort of being a bit crazy when I have 8 rated goalies, but I'd rather have 8 rated goalies than 3 rated goalies. Is SICHL going to have to pick somebody up when one of his goalies goes down?
SICHL may get on my SICHL list for holding up the Sims this year. I think Bob holds the record for the last 2 years for having illegal rosters, but we'll see what happens. I don't have free agents in front of me to tell you whether or not there's anybody available for him to pick up, but he does have some prospect goalies that could be emergency rated as per rule, whatever the number is.
3 goalies available right now.
Right. Okay. So Don is currently emailing me to sign them all, I'm sure. So SICHL, as soon as you see this, you better get your email in.
You're on notice, fellas. We can't although I have actually broken the sim before, but not for quite a long period of time. So hopefully that won't happen to SICHL. We're a big fan of SICHL and his 96 players, good Lord. So he's just got to maybe dress one of them up as goalie and put them in. That's how it works, right? Yeah. As Mark said, no one understands how the sim works, so probably not. We have moved on tiers, fellas. We're now in the Eric. What's this tier called?
This is the bubble tier.
Bubble tier. Okay,
this is the bubble tier. These are teams
have a moderate chance of making the playoffs. And one team in here is a massive surprise. It's not this one, though. Ranked number 21. Ooh, the Vancouver Island Norsemen. So they're not last year, but they're not back to their old crushing ways of making the finals. Mark, what do you make of Matt's Norsemen?
So my first note is this, to me, when I was looking at them, is the first SICHL caliber roster that I have seen.
Okay.
I look at this team, I'm like, okay, this is a team. There's a team here that can compete this year. No offense to the teams that have come before, but they all have pretty massive holes or, no depth or whatever really to compete this year. Right. Crosby is injured. Everybody loves that.
That didn't take long.
He does have a total lack of goaltending.
Right.
He spent big money on Oshie. Good for him. Adam Fox, one of my favorite players. Would love to have him in my
Now,
team.
how come Adam Fox gets an 88 DF? I thought this
he actually plays on the penalty kill.
Well, that's not fair. All right.
And somehow, I don't know how this happened, through all, karma that I was throwing his way, through actually losing the lottery, Matt somehow still got the best player in the draft. I don't know how Owen Power got drafted by the Norsemen. He basically won the lottery, even though he didn't. But so he really played the long game on that, and smugly did win the whole gold rule debate.
I like to think that justice was served as to who got picks number 1 and number 2. The hockey gods corrected a grievous error. Eric, other than his goaltending, Matt actually has a pretty good. I mean, plug a good goalie in here, and this is a playoff team in my eyes.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. His forward and defensive core are both significantly improved on last year, 6 spots up apiece. It's just that goaltending that's holding him back. The curse of Matt Murray, everybody's I'd say probably second favorite Twitter personality, is really, really challenging. Matt just doesn't have a way to pivot on that. The goaltending roster stable, if you want to call it that, just is not strong for the Norsemen.
Right.
So, this was a rough year to be hitting free agency looking for a goalie as well. This was a thin year. Right. The only 2 really decent ones got snapped up for pretty significant contracts.
Well, the good news is that really good goalies are so easy to find. He can just go get one. Maybe that's why Chasm drafted Wallstedt so high, Eric, is because young good goalies are hard to find. You did this to yourself. You've won twice. You've embraced the hate. This is not. I didn't do it. Remember, I didn't do it. I did bring it up, but
I'm not talking to you.
Remember this. I didn't do it. This is not me. This is one of the reasons why we didn't invite Chasm onto the Power Rankings.
No, but you're enjoying this too much.
I'm kidding. We didn't invite everybody. I'd love to have Chasm on the Power Rankings.
No, we would not. Chasm's
when Eric has calmed down. Well, that's great, Matt. Really looking forward to see what Matt does. He may trade. He's got some young pieces. Maybe he could trade for a goalie if the Norsemen go on a run. But certainly a possibility this year. They're probably not gonna pick number 1 again next year. But who knows? Eric, let's move on. The London Monarchs took a bit of a tumble. One of the biggest drops we've seen. Number 20, we've got the London Monarchs. Eric, what happened to Michael's team? I thought they were good.
They were good. They're less good this year. They took a tumble at all 3 positions.
Okay, so it's not just goaltending.
Defense, goaltending, like everything right across the board is markedly down from last year. That's in part that he made some pretty cagey moves last season, moving out some talent. He also just got smacked with the re-rate button, unfortunately. He's got 2 really strong forwards, but last year he had 3 really strong forwards. So that's a notable drop. And then on defense, I think Hanifin, it's fair to say, is quite underrated. This is, again, the curse of the semi-offensive defenseman. Mackenzie Wieger, massive young talent in Florida. Got some pretty solid ratings here, but not I think, what you would be expecting based on the kind of play that he showed when he was playing without Ekblad last year. He should be good this year at least. But yeah, goaltending is tough too.
It's not Killington. Isn't it pronounced weirdly? It's like, isn't it like Shillington or something?
I don't actually know.
He plays on Calgary. I've never
Hylinger.
noticed him before. I was watching a Calgary game the other day. I'm like, who is? I think he's number 20. I forget what he was, but I'm like, who is this guy? And so he has him. Mark,
Jake Dean, he should rate well later on.
Yeah. You know, this is funny. He has Shane Starrett, and that name jumped out at me because I drafted his brother Bo Starrett, who never did much for me, but I just like that name. Mark, I have a feeling that Michael's going to kind of be like Norm in that he's not rebuilding. He may have just got some bad luck. I don't really see him blowing it up. He could make the playoffs and be better next year as well. Yeah,
I mean, he's got Ovi, the SICHL's best goal scorer in history, and he's going to keep riding Ovi until he retires, I'm sure. So he's never going to. He's got to keep surrounding Ovi with good players. Like, he just has to. It's the rules. But he doesn't currently have a lot of forward depth. And to my eyes, not a ton of great prospects in the pipeline. So he's going to have to get creative, I think, because I not to question the power rankings formula, but I would have had the Norsemen ahead of the Monarchs. Like, I see a lot of holes in this roster. It's maybe doesn't have the total lack of goaltending that the Norsemen have, but his goaltending's not fantastic either. So
if Binnington goes down, this is a rough year for the Monarchs. Basically, a lot is riding on that goalie. Okay. Well, good to know, Michael. I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry because, again, remember, this is not us talking. This is the data, and we just happen to be interpreting it in a specific way. Eric, this is probably the biggest surprise to me, maybe out of any of the preseason power rankings, aside from maybe one or two other teams. The Seattle Grunge are rated 19th. How did this happen? I thought Seattle was really bad last year. What did they do? It's
pretty incredible. Phil has done I think fair to say, masterful job of doing a quick turn on this team. He got some help with the re-rates. Like, let's not shy away from that too much. Tyson Barrie with the 90 puck handling. That's generous, to put it politely. Right. But Alec Martinez, likewise, huge rating on defense. He's kind of the inverse of the Monarchs, actually. He has no real standout Ovechkin kind of, top of the line 78 overall guys. He's got depth, and he's got a ton of it. So he's done a good job of exploiting the availability of relatively cheap, second pair, middle six type players. And his, even his fourth line and his bottom pair are pretty respectable compared to, I'd say, 90% of the league's teams. The other thing that I don't want to overlook is that massive trade that he made with his first rounder, picking up Gaudreau and Monahan. That's an absolute tempo-setting kind of franchise-altering trade. So yeah, hat tip there, Phil.
And Phil still has 2 firsts next year, including Dublin's, which is going to be potentially a very high pick. See, Phil's made some really good moves here. The Grunge are kind of like the Rockies in that they had a look at me. And they figured, no, we're not sticking around like Henry for 4 or 5 years. We're doing this now, 1 or 2 years, and they're not going to lose anybody in the upcoming expansion draft, which gives them quite a bit of bargaining power, I would think, Mark.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're looking at the league's biggest cheater here in Eric Schneider. I'm sure he's going to find some way to exploit Seattle's.
Right.
Seattle's.
Surely not.
Burned that bridge, Mark. That was we're planning on my part.
But yeah, I like what Phil's doing. He kind of made a bit of a splash in free agency with Pius Suter, who I kind of thought the bidding would go a little more crazy on him. It didn't. I mean, I think he's getting overpaid, but not to the degree that usually SICHL GMs would do. Right. An interesting point about Seattle, they don't, at least what I can see, they don't have a franchise player signed, and they have no UFAs on the roster. So there's another rule in the rule book that he should be exploiting to make this team even better, which would be to pick up an FP. I quite like Holtz. And I think that's going to be a player that's going to be good for him for a while. And Tkachuk is looking like a franchise player for him up front too. So
Definitely.
Seattle's going to be good. They're going to be pretty good this year, but they're going to be even better next year, I think.
The stars seem to have aligned for Seattle. Will we see a playoff run? Now, Phil's relatively still new to the league, so we'll see if he can make the playoffs with this roster. I think it's, like I said, the most interesting result we've seen so far. But yeah, the stars seem to have aligned, and Phil's team is looking really good. The last team in the bubble tier, Mark, at number 18, we have one of the league's darlings. We have the Brandon Wheatkins at number 18. Tell us about the Brandon Wheatkins, Mark.
One of the original 6. And
yes, sir.
Yes, I'm sure he would win most popular GM every year. Just everybody loves Doug. What a great guy. He has got depth everywhere. He doesn't have any top-end talent, but it's just depth.
Yeah, no kidding.
Unfortunately, my MVP from last season, Nick Bonino, is starting the season injured for him, which is going to hurt a bit.
A bit of a boo-boo.
He's got Anisimov signed as a franchise player long-term, which is an interesting strategy. Not many do that. But the thing is, it's a resilient team. He can lose a few players, and he's got next man up. They're all, like, just pick them. They're all pretty much in the same vein. He's got a ton of middle 6 guys.
And Eric, his defensive depth, he's got 1, 2, 3. I'm just trying to count here. It's going to take too long. Of defensemen that like have pretty useful defensive ratings. They may not be like all-star players, but as Mark said, Doug has a lot.
This is a team built to be resilient. They're right around where we had them ranked last season, and then you saw what they very nearly did to me, taking me to 7 games in the playoffs. So this is not a team to be taken lightly. Yeah, I know everybody was very upset about that.
Hey, I was cheering for you, buddy.
You should have seen my reaction when the sim did not kick you out in that round. Oh.
Mark, did you maybe have a re-sim button? You're like, I sneezed. I gotta do it.
Hovering your finger over the button.
The hard drive crashed. Gotta back up.
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting team. The injuries will hurt. His top 2 goalies are likewise injured to start the season. Preseason is merciless.
But more importantly, why does everyone play their starting goalies in preseason?
We'll never understand it.
So whose fault is it, really?
Yeah, it's like, whose line is it anyway? The points are made up and the games are meaningless, so you should just skip over it entirely. But Boone Jenner, due for a pretty solid re-rate if he keeps playing the way he has this season. Who else? Marcus Foligno, I've been really impressed watching him with the Wild in that other league.
I should not have traded him.
Yeah, that was probably not.
Don't worry, I traded him for Tyler Benson. Good move, Henry.
Yeah.
We should never trade again, ever. Ever.
Yeah, I think the message I would have is a word of warning to my fellow GMs. Doug. The Wheatkins always play better than their roster suggests, and you should not take any games against them lately.
Doug
they
knows
the top a bubble tier.
Very cool. Eric, what's the next tier, and why are the Barons? This is another surprise, a team that's improved pretty dramatically compared to last year, particularly in net. One of the biggest improvements we've seen in the league. Eric, why are the Barons? What's the tier, and why are the Barons so much higher than maybe some people would have expected?
This is the creatively named playoff tier. These are teams that I think should be pretty darn solid. Now, granted, we're getting into position 17, so there will be probably 2 or 3 of these guys that don't actually make it, and the bubble teams sneak in. But if I were a betting man, it would be on these guys.
Mark, what stands out to you about the Barons? I think probably the first thing for me is they have the kind of depth that maybe some other teams do, not maybe like all-star talent, but depth, and also the biggest difference is they actually have a goalie.
Yeah, which is rare this season. They're like the Wheatkins. They have signed a franchise player long-term, which is, again, an unusual way to play that one. Right. I actually like his defense more than the power rankings formula would suggest. He's got some good defensive ratings, not great overall ratings. So
right.
I think the Barons could even be higher. than this.
Wow.
I think they've got an excellent goalie. They've got defensive D. They've got a few forwards who can do something, and that, as long as they can get a top line rolling, they could be a middle of the pack team in the weaker conference for sure.
They have some assets in terms of draft picks. Eric, do you see them maybe making a trade if they get on a heater and maybe get near the playoffs? Do you see Bob pulling the trigger in that regard?
I wouldn't be surprised. Bob's shown he's a pretty opportunistic GM. He takes the deals that are available at the time, and he's not one to mince words about it either. So if he's doing well in the standings and Saros stays healthy, that's really what their season comes down to, is their number one goalie playing 70 plus games.
He's already tired too.
He's already tired, which is not a great sign. Like this, we may as well have the exact same power rankings as we did last year for him with Saros.
Except last year, Saros, I think, was rated 72 or 71 or something. So definitely an improvement.
He had even worse endurance and durability, but his core stats were pretty comparable. It's all just down to how many games they can squeeze out of him.
Is Slater Koek the best name in the league?
Isn't it Kukuk? Yeah.
How do you pronounce it?
Cuckoo, I thought.
It's Cuckoo?
Cuckoo?
Either way, that sounds like maybe an orc from Warcraft 3. That's a pretty amazing name. So on the naming power rankings, which is making a comeback this year, by the way, it's probably my favorite. We won't do the rankings based on the names; that's too difficult. But in the names featured power rankings, that is coming. That's going to get mentioned for sure. All right, well that's the Barons. Mark, let's get on to another. A different kind of team, a veteran team. Pat's Ottawa Slammers, of course, are never out of it, even though you'd think eventually they would tumble and tank. Never. Doesn't ever seem to happen. What do you make of the Slammers?
The Slammers, the Slam Wagon. I mean, Brad Marchand is a hockey god. We all recognize that.
Why is his DF 69 though? That seems kind of.
He plays first PK. He and Bergeron are the.
He leads the league in shorthanded goals every year.
He leads the league in shorties.
The power kill.
He is
very strange.
He is the everything player.
Right.
Love to hate him, hate to love him, whatever. He's an incredible player. So good on Pat for franchising our friend Brad. He does. For next year, he does have a couple of decent franchise targets, and Danault or Hornquist. I think Danault is probably the early favorite based on his play early on. Dustin Wolf, I noticed, looks like is playing well as well for him in the future. But yeah, the Slammers are a decent team. I think they're probably in rather than out.
Okay.
And all aboard the Slam Wagon.
Eric, I see that Erik Karlsson finally gets a decent defensive rating, but of course his passing and scoring have taken a huge hit. Can't win with this guy, can you?
Clearly not. But at least he's got some guys like Nate Schmidt, who should re-rate quite nicely next year. He's having an absolute heater for the Jets. New surroundings helps. Basically, leaving the Canucks will immediately help with your production. Go figure.
Apparently, sadly, yes.
Yeah. Aside from Connor Garland, because his numbers have been pretty solid. So that's a nice addition for the Knuckleheads. The one bit of advice, unsolicited, I admit, that I would give to Pat is to make the most of their goalie ratings this year, because their top two there in Drager and Kudobin will not be anywhere near that next season if they continue to play the way they are in the other league. So.
Pat's never afraid to make moves. He's got all his draft picks for next year and for a lot of years going forward, so he can pivot pretty easily depending on how his team does, and not every team can make that claim. That's pretty cool. So nice to see Pat competitive once again. Mark, it makes sense for you to start off with your Bros team here at number 15, the Crunch, of course, much like the Slammers. Despite all the happenings and goings on, they're never out of it. The Crunch at 15, dropping down a little bit from last year, but what do you make of your Bros team?
Well, Kirk joined the Dads Club of the SICHL this year. So you may have noticed he's been pretty quiet because I don't know if he's sleeping.
Not much of a change, but
I don't know if he's sleeping. But he's got a solid team, and some of the guys on here who are already rated well are having great years like Ekblad,
Are they ever?
Shesterkin,
Oh my
Matthews.
God.
Austin Matthews is basically now in his prime and is going to stick there for a while. So
Bjorkstrand, he could FP. Getzlav next year.
Tarasenko's putting some numbers.
Getzlav somehow is still getting second line minutes in the other league, so he'll be a solid FP target. I'm not too afraid of their goaltending this year, but I think Shesterkin's likely to get a massive re-rate next year, and then the Crunch are right back to the top of the World Conference, I think, for a while.
I think my favorite draft moment maybe ever is Kirk literally having the number 1 overall pick at the summit, no less, dialing in. Matthews mic drop. That's it. He's out of here. Oh no! It wasn't. Was it that year? No, it was. Oh, sorry, that was a different year. That was the year before. But I still love that. Going to his draft history page and be like, 1 pick, just 1, the best one. I'm done. I'm like, perfect. That's amazing. Love that.
That was Hischier.
Yeah, sorry, it was Hischier. Beg your pardon. Yeah. Kirk, I love that he has 100 players. I'm always a big fan of teams that stock the cupboard. This is very Kirk to me. Of course, he has 50 rated and 50 unrated. I don't know. It seems so appropriate. And he's gotten a mountain of money. So much like Pat, he can pivot depending on how he is doing. He doesn't have to blow up the future because, as you mentioned, if he doesn't make it this year, he will probably make it next year. We're sounding like broken records here, hopefully not from the grunge, but goaltending, he only has 3 rated goalies, and he doesn't necessarily have one that could take him all the way, but we've seen low OV rated goalies carry teams before, so it's not necessarily impossible to believe that the Crunch could be a top team in the world. Very cool. Okay, let's move it along. We are over the halfway mark. If you guys are good to keep going, I am good to keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Let's roll. All right, let's do it. Eric, maybe a little bit of a surprise, actually, here. We've got a real improvement, particularly, again, in the goaltending. We've got Bryce's Vipers ranked at number 14, probably the highest we've seen him rated in quite a while before the season. Why the jump?
You called it. Goaltending's a big part of that, and he's got a really solid tandem there in Talbot and Bobrovsky, my boy, whom should be an insane franchise player for him next season. It pains me deeply that I had to part with him because he didn't fit my roster, but that's where we're at.
Okay.
He has one of my favorite young defensemen in Provorov there. I think I said in the power rankings last season.
91,
that is,
yeah.
That's a guy that's going to get those ratings pretty much every single season unless something just catastrophic happens to him in Philly. He's money in the bank. And then up front, continuing to make just very solid, smooth additions. Zach and Gensel, solid. Hall, a little bit low on the rankings this season, but look at that. He's on a tasty little $7.5 million 3-year deal. So that could end up paying for itself nicely.
Man, I'm looking back at the 2015 draft. How stacked was that draft? And don't you dare look at my pick, because that one's probably my worst pick, maybe ever. But like he got Provorov 9th, and I thought, oh my God, what a steal. But like you look at the ones drafted before him, it's like, those are all pretty good players too. But he may have got certainly one of the lower gems in Provorov. As you said, Eric, his ratings are absolutely outstanding. Yeah. Mark, what's your take on the Vipers? Are they going to be a playoff team?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find out who your pick was in that first round.
Don't.
Yeah. So the Vipers, yes, Bobrovsky. Yeah, that's going to be your franchise player there, Bryce. I think, but in general, I feel like he might be a little overrated in these rankings. Because, because he has a tandem of goalies, and I know the power ranking formula favors having a half decent backup. Not enough forward or defensive talent for me to make the playoffs. I would say he's probably going to be the one who's not going to make it based on my prognostications.
That's why you're here, and I'm glad you told us that. The Vipers, to me, I feel like just my scattered memory of power rankings, they always seem to start well, and tragically they never like get out of contention until like the last 3 or 4 games where like they kind of hang on. They're super close. Their defensive Their defensive ratings are a roller coaster. It is really funny to watch. Like, they are all over the place. So it'll be really interesting to see how Bryce manages this roster. As you said, Mark, there's some interesting pieces there, but it's pretty uneven. So it'll be very interesting to see if the Vipers make it. Eric, do you think the Vipers are going to make it?
Well, who am I to disagree with the unimpeachable power
the
rankings?
Almighty math. Oh,
that's how I live my life.
Mercy on us, Matt. All right, let's get. Speaking of I was going to say, speaking of favorite GMs, Mark. One of the speaking of 1-2 punches and top pairings, we've got you, and then we've got Mike. Mike is rated lucky 13, improving 5 spots from last year. Why do you think Mike's team is going to be a playoff team, or are they?
Well, Mike, one of my favorite GMs, he's basically the Wheatkins plus Bo Horvat.
Okay.
He's got a ton of depth.
Does he ever?
He's got a very resilient team. As long as Horvat stays healthy, he's in for sure. I think. I mean, I guess the other difference between him and the Wheatkins is prospect depth. He's got some half decent prospects like Henry Skey, who I would have loved to have also snagged with an extra pick that year, but he's got several franchise player targets this year, UFAs. Kessel, Stasny, Sherratt. Going to be interesting to see who he picks next year. So he may be moving one of those pieces or holding on. His suspect goaltending could be his downfall, though. Linus Ullmark looks fine.
We should just say that about almost every single team. This year is going to be very interesting to see. Maybe a record amount of goal. Well, no, because of that one season. Eric, and of course your boy Cale Makar, that's actually Mike's guy. He also got hit with the "How dare you be an offensively gifted defenseman" in SICHL.
He did, and I think this is going to be the key for Mike, is being able to figure out how to use Makar effectively.
Right.
Because 97 puck handling and 81 passing.
81 passing is nuts for a defenseman. Like,
insanity.
Nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. So if he can figure out how to turn that into points, and Makar leads his team in scoring potentially, that would not be a bad thing.
Do you think, Mark, maybe does he pair him with Braun, so you get like a really high defensive rating defenseman with a lower one, or does he shield him away and like just play him on the power play? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Or
just play him on the wing. I mean, I don't know. Who knows what is the penalty in the sim for playing a defenseman on the wing? Maybe Mike will find out.
If anyone was going to try, it would be Mike. Very cool. The Supersonics, again, one of those teams where there's always a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. In my head, again, my scattered memory, they're always very streaky. Like, I just remember them like we might as well be able to, we can check your the top 100 and look, and I bet he has a very high standard deviation where he's just all over the place all the time. Like, sometimes he looks like a top 5 team, other times he can't buy a goal. The ratings look pretty good, and we're starting to veer into these teams are quite good territory. So yeah, definitely wouldn't surprise me to see Edmonton in the race. So Mike, congratulations, I think. And thank you again for co-running one of the best, if not the best, fantasy league ever. Eric, this one may be the biggest shocker, and oh boy, what is Dustin going to do to get out of here? Most teams might be happy to be rated 12th. Probably not the Aces at 12. They've dropped 9 spots from last year. Oh boy, I feel like we could dedicate a whole podcast to the Aces and Dustin's moves. Might as well start. What's going on with the Aces?
So this is a team that lost some big franchise players, big UFAs, which hits their ratings. They had some re-rate issues as well with some perennial like top line unimpeachable studs like Malkin, who's only a 73.
Right.
Kuznetsov, who was previously I think like a 76 or 77, he's a 71 this year.
Right.
So that's a tough one to overcome. They're missing Shea Weber in a big way on their defense, and Jeff Petrie is going to be pretty solid, but he has no replacement. And the other tricky thing for them is, re-rates wise, this is the Scotch talking. Klingberg and Slavin took a real surprising turn there.
Did they ever?
I think it's kind of time on ice issues in that other league that are primarily holding them back. So they're not nearly as good on paper as they are in real life. And then likewise, Darcy Kemper.
Oof.
That's
big oof.
That's a serious underrating of a guy who worked his tail off last season for the Yotes. And I mean, if there's any silver lining here, it's that he could be a very good franchise player for Dusty next season. So
again, what I'm reminded of, Mark, is I should never trade again, because of course I traded Ryan Strome for absolute peanuts 3 years ago. I'm not making any more trades ever again, ever. I cannot believe it. Every time we go, I'm like, oh, who drafted that guy? You dummy. You drafted him.
Every time I try to make a trade with you, Henry, you shut it down. I don't know.
It's because I don't trust you, because you're very good at what you do. There's a reason everyone trades with me.
I've been trying to get Mcavoy for ages, but
you told me not to trade Mcavoy to you.
I told you not to trade him to anybody, but if you're going to trade him, you have to trade him to me.
Okay. Okay, Mark, what's going on with us?
Vegas, they signed Duncan Keith for big money in UFA. And who else did they sign? Atkinson, is that a new signing? I mean, he's still doing Dusty type things, spending money that he doesn't have.
Right.
Though somehow he does actually have a little bit of money in the bank. I mean, he's got to keep it going. I mean, he's got so many UFAs this year. You're saying Kemper is probably a good franchise player candidate, but he's also got Malkin on an expiring contract. So how do you not sign Malkin? I am constantly surprised by how Dusty keeps this train on the rails. Like it has looked like it was going to just have to be, just burned and dispersed or something for a number of years, and he just manages to keep pulling rabbits out of his hat. So
he could very easily blow it up. Like, he has a ton of assets under contract that he could very easily trade and get back on it. And we know that Dusty will, because he always somehow does. And I bet his rebuild will last 11 hours.
I mean, could this be the year that he just trades away every player for draft picks?
He could.
And just blows our mind.
Maybe back to Eric.
shows up in Toronto with 22 draft picks.
Eric, don't you get any ideas?
I'll give him back his 2025 picks for $1.50 on the dollar.
That probably caused more Twitter reaction than I've ever seen in my life. That was amazing, and a Norm video. So that was a good trade. That offer I made you, Eric, is still available, by the way.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay. Dustin's one of those guys, again, where I never have to worry about talking about their team. They're so interesting. On paper, this would be a very good team in the other league. Duclair's having a good year. Kuznetsov's having a good year. Malkin's going to come back. Puljujarvi's having a good year. Look at his experience and leadership. If he gets into the playoffs, all of a sudden they might be a little tougher to knock out. Aces are a total wild card, and I'm all for it. Let's move on, because we are almost in the top 10. We're still in the playoff team tier. We got a couple more to go. And okay, now this is funny. Every single time, I swear, every single time I do the preseason power rankings, these two teams are right next to each other. I don't understand it. Maybe it's just because they know each other in real life. There are a few Americans, but it's fate or kismet or whatever it is. But St. Louis and Calgary are right next to each other again. So let's start with Calgary. Mark, we've got Calgary, the Mustangs, at number 11. No change from last year. But is there going to be a change in results this year?
Matty Birch. So my first note on the Mustangs is this is the first quote unquote good team that I have seen.
Whoa, big words. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they've got Patrick Kane and Mark Scheifele. They've got decent forward depth. They've got Giordano. They've got good defensive defensemen. They've got a couple of guys with some passing. They have a good goaltending tandem.
One of the few instances we can say that.
Yeah, I mean, not gonna, they're not 80 rated, but he's got two for this year's ratings, two definitely upper mid-pack goalies, both of whom are probably going to rate well next year. So Calgary is looking good. I like his pipeline too. Lysell, Heinola, Robert Thomas.
He's
yeah. So I think Calgary's good. Calgary's good.
Okay. There's a Kevin Ekman Larson. That's kind of funny. I know Matt's very keen on my boy Rasmus Dahlin. He and I have talked about a trade here and there. Who knows? Maybe that'll happen one day. But I agree with you, Mark. This is the first team where I'm kind of like, whoa, those Kane and Scheifele, pretty much the ideal forwards you want. Giordano once again is rated as an absolute beast. His experience and leadership, if he gets into the playoffs, are going to be really incredible. It's so funny to see Thornton and Marleau still in our league. They're both at 41 years of age. If their XP and leadership could go higher than 99, they probably would be. Eric, what do you make of the Mustangs? Their defensive depth, as Mark said, is pretty crazy.
It's solid, yeah. And for a team that moved less than any other in the rankings, like this isn't just a team that stayed at 11 from last year, but their forwards improved 1 slot, their defense is unchanged, and their goalies dropped 2 spots.
Okay.
So about as flat a team as you get here.
Even Steven.
Most of the guys that Mark listed off are guys that played for this team last season. So I guess that's not hugely surprising. The thing that I'm really curious to see is the goaltending platoon that he's got there, because durability questionable for both. Mm-hmm. So that would lead me to think that this is probably a very boom bust team. They could finish way higher than 11 or miss the playoffs altogether. I think it's actually fairly unlikely that they're around the 11th spot at the end of the season. I really do think it's going to be a season of extremes. And the big thing that leads me that way is the style control rating for both those goalies, 96 and 94.
We know style control is one of the more
that is a
ratings
primary,
right?
Yeah, that's a big one. That's the one that we quite often see, those like 65, 67 OV goalies that have like a high 90s because they played one game and got a shutout. Right. And for whatever reason, they tend to perform pretty well, at least in short bursts.
Now, I haven't really been paying attention to this too much, but the EN and the DU, that makes me a little nervous with the goalies. But I think that's just kind of the same across the board, right?
For the most part, there are only like 7 or 8 goalies this season that have actual starter goalie 70-game play kind of expected endurance and durability. The rest of the league should be running pretty hard platoons.
Okay, well then it's good that he has a couple of goalies that he can rely on, and some goalies that maybe should not be goalies, but God bless them. Very cool. Okay, well congrats Matt. You almost made the top 10, but you're very very close to the next place team. It was almost neck and neck. Mark, we're entering into the top 10. We haven't exited this tier yet, though. That's coming up soon. We've got the St. Louis Spartans. Now, I thought Sean was supposed to be rebuilding, and all of a sudden he's really good again, largely due to the fact that he had a big goaltending change. So what do we make of St. Louis, Mark?
Well, and let's not forget, he signed one of the top UFAs available, David Krejci.
I can't forget him. You always bring him up.
I know Eric has been low on Krejci for a while, but he's one of the most underrated hockey minds to have played in the last decade. Very sad to see him leave the other league.
Right.
But family reasons. But savvy signing by St. Louis, because that was kind of the one part of his roster where you could have been like, yeah, where's the offense going to come from? So Krejci is going to be a distributing playmaker for him up there. And Kopitar, not only a great player now, but a definite FP target for next season.
What a player.
He's playing. But one thing I would say about him is I'm not sure that the Flower is going to re-rate that well next year. So Sean may want to make the most of that 84 rating that he's got in his goaltender this year and see if he can put some other pieces in place, because it's not going to happen next year.
Eric, I'm really intrigued by that, Mark. I'm glad you brought that up. Eric, does Sean see how the season go and then trade him? Because he's going to get a first for an 84 OV goalie, especially some GM's going to pay that at least.
He's an FP.
He's an FP.
He can't move him. I beg
your pardon. He's an FP. He can't. So it's
either goes
ride
for
or die with the Flower.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, tell Tell me what you think the Spartans are going to do. What an interesting season this year that the Spartans are going to have.
It's going to be fascinating. This is, I think, the roster that Sean's put together is going to really prove how well he understands the sim.
Okay.
Because he's got a lot of guys with less than impressive OVs, which suggests that their total ratings package isn't that great, but they seem to have ratings in really interesting spots. So like Krejci, like we were talking about there, 80 puck handling, 90 passing. That's among the tops in the entire league.
Wow.
So
okay.
if
you know he's going to be on the power play.
That's huge.
Right.
And is that a good foil for another similarly lopsided player like Niederreiter, who's only a 70 passing but 86 scoring? So you would think those two are going to be joined at the hip all year.
Yeah.
There's other guys up and down the lineup like that who have just kind of spotty ratings, like a certain ex-Schooner Victor Arvidsson, who I'm fond of. His checking and strength are atrocious, so his OV is only 68, but he's got 79 puck handling, 75 passing, 72 scoring. So like this is a valuable player that should be more of like a top 6 kind of threat. You see the same sort of thing on defense. The defensive ratings are similarly scattered as with a couple other teams. You've got 94 to 68 to 84 to 59, and it just bounces around.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, but there's the kernel of a good team. There's some good puck handling numbers there. And really the reason, this is no surprise, the reason that they are ranked where they are is entirely on the back of Fleury. So
without
Flower goes,
they're probably not in this tier?
Not even close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've seen goalies steal series and cups before. Will it happen again? Most importantly, I have to add this to the All-Star Name Hall of Fame, Doyle Somerby. That's a great name. I love that. Who names Doyle?
Oh, just to show how lopsided this team is.
Yeah.
They have the second best goaltending in the entire league, according to this ranking.
Right.
Forwards are 18th, defense 22nd.
Oh my goodness.
So just how much he can milk out of that forward and defensive group.
We've seen it happen before, but can they dance with the big boys? And now we're in a different tier. We have 2 more tiers to go. Eric, what is this tier called, and what team is up first at number 9, dropping 4 spots from last year?
This is a small tier. This is the best of the rest.
I love it. Best of the rest. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah. So we've got, and that'll make sense once you see the last couple tiers. So the entry here at number 9 is Don the Huskies. A little bit down from last season, down 4 spots. We had them in the 15 last year. They didn't really do too much to the team. It's really just victims of the re-rates. They're on the John Gibson re-rate roller coaster that I apparently cursed them with. By giving Gibson my endorsement over a certain overrated Russian goalie.
Right.
We'll circle back to that little comment.
I wonder whose goalie that could be.
Yeah. So it's a tough one. It's a tough pill to swallow for old Donnie. He is, if I may be so bold, a victim of his principles. This is a guy who there is no excuse for not going in there and dropping $50 million on Markstrom.
Right.
It's criminal that the rest of this roster is dependent upon Jonathan Bernier as a starter.
It's like putting an electric scooter engine in a Lamborghini. The rest of his roster looks pretty lethal, but goaltending might be his downfall. Mark, we've seen Don excel and not excel. What do you think is going to happen with them this year?
Well, I think we're all saying the same thing here. Like, I was going through his roster and I said, wow, this is a strong team everywhere. And then ... well, goalies. Bernier ? Yeah, but Don's got depth as he always does. He's got talent as he always does, but he's he'd even be better if he had held on to Rask. I mean, John Gibson is not the young goalie you want to build your franchise around, Eric.
He's got rhythm. He's got music. And what he also has is, I thought I had a lot of rated goalies, and I had 10 and got rid of 2. Don has 15 rated goalies.
Yeah.
15. I thought the sim was going to break when I saw that.
15 so far.
15.
Right.
After he sees this video, he's signing 3 more.
They're not all that good, but hey, we've seen some teams where a 64 backup is looking pretty good. Don could easily make a move here, but he better keep it to a minimum in terms of number of players because he's already maxed out at 100. Don has a lot of everything. Well, again, Don the Huskies, impossible to be bored with you in the league. Probably one of our top Twitter users. We're going to see if they're going to be one of the top SICHL teams. Number 8, Mark. Once again, Guy's not moving. Guy's not going anywhere. He is in the top 10. I don't think I've ever rated him below the top 10. Even if I tried, the sim was like, no, up you go. Can't do it. Wouldn't let me. We have the Grizzly Bears, still force a habit. And number 8.
It feels wrong.
It does feel wrong, but I hear New Jersey is coming. Mark, what do you make of the Grizzly Bears? Are we once again at his mercy?
Tristan Jarry.
Ah, okay.
Not actually a good goalie. Will never be rated well, I don't think. I think this is a rare mistake for our friend Guy. I think I've heard him before say that he thought that Jarry was an underrated, definite starter. Right. And I'm not seeing it myself. And so I think that's going to be his downfall, though
but he also may not let any shots get through.
That's the thing.
It's possible, but the note that I made here so McDonough is the only UFA on the team. So there are a couple of UFA or pending UFA goalies who would be an upgrade over what he has.
Okay.
Maybe that's a move he wants to make. If he does, then I think, he's got a solid team as he has had for, I don't know, it feels like decades.
Eric, this is the first lineup where I've looked at his top 8 defensemen, and I'm like, he doesn't have to juggle defensive lines at all. All of them are good.
Yeah, it's horrifying. Boom. There's no other word for it. I mean, this has been my rival since I joined the league 15 years ago, and I really wish he would just suck for once. It would make my life so much easier. Mario Ferrero is just a gift from the sim gods. Like, this is not a particularly good hockey player. I'm sorry. I've watched the Sharks play a few times this season. He's not good.
Well, he's not 94, good in hockey. He's 94 defense in this league.
But he plays all the freaking time in San Jose because their defense is just a train wreck. So he's out there on the ice because they got nothing better. So
maybe he knew that when he drafted him.
Maybe.
It can't be. I wouldn't put it past him. If it keeps happening over and over again.
So that's the thing. Just as Ristolainen gets traded to Philly and he's finally looking like he's going to have a crappy re-rate, Ferrero comes in and is the new Ristolainen. Like it's criminal. So the only thing that makes me happy about this is that, as Mark said, a rare misstep by Guy with not securing a better goalie.
Right.
Again, how does Markstrom end up on the Millionaires as a backup when you've got the Huskies and the Bears both needing a starter? And they both have a ton of cash. It's crazy to me.
You know what's amazing is Guy has to be one of the few really good teams that has all his draft picks for the next 5 years. Other teams have all their draft picks, but other teams are the Metros or the Gladiators. Guy has all his draft picks, all of them. In fact, I'm kind of shocked he doesn't have other teams' draft picks yet, but it's a long time between now and the draft.
That could still come.
Viewers watching this, see this as a warning. We are not recommending that you do this, but it's like with Eric. Teams are like, don't help Eric out. It's like my job is not to not help specific GMs. My job is to make my team better. Keep that in mind, GMs, when you're making trades and you're wheeling and dealing and hustling and styling and profiling. I swear some of these players I look and I'm like, they're made up. I've never even heard of them. And he's got Andrew Peak, who's got a 75 DF. I'm like, I could use a 75 DF. Peak. All right, let's get off the topic of the Grizzly Bears. Oof. All right, Mark, we've got 7 more to go, and now we're really starting to get into the teams that are gonna cause some waves here. At number 7, who do we have at number 7, Mark, and why are they at number 7?
Well, our favorite podcast host, Ian Constable, and his band Rockies
Woo!
I'm not exaggerating when I say it's my favorite podcast. This year, I guess since I didn't have a first round pick, the draft podcasts were not as focused on the Express as I thought they could have been.
That was my complaint too.
But last year when I actually had a first round pick, I'm not kidding. I listened to that episode with Sylvain like 5 times. I made notes. I made different notes.
Yeah, I should pay attention to that.
And then I tried to make sure I picked every player that Ian liked. Connor Zary.
Right.
And then this year, I'm just going off on an Ian tangent now since Eric is being a dad. But this year, I managed to finish just behind the Rockies in the standings. And I thought, this is amazing. I'm going to be able to snipe Ian every single round. And what did he do? He traded every single pick that he had in the draft. Thank you, Ian, for ruining all my fun. Except I think I still managed to snipe Eric a couple times, so that probably worked out for me.
100%.
Which was actually way more fun than sniping Ian. Anyway, Banff. Several UFAs. No blow-me-away franchise player targets, so opportunity for him to make a move there. But just a really strong team. A really strong pipeline. I mean, Kirby Doc, Lundell, Spencer Knight. Ian came into this league and just said, I'm going to build a great team. And it has not taken him long. Henry. Ian is got a good team. It's very
trying. Ian does have a really good team. Ian also has 14 rated goalies, not as many as Don, but actually a little bit better goaltending depth. Eric, why are they just outside the highest? Well, the sort of the mostly the highest tier. Are they? I mean, they could beat anyone in the playoffs, right? Absolutely.
This is a dangerous team, top to bottom. The things that hold them back are largely around the age of the team. So this is a young group for the most part. It's sprinkled with a few veterans. Vlasic was a brilliant addition to an otherwise extremely inexperienced lineup.
Right.
I mean, if you look at the other, ignore him from the current list and just look at what the top 6 would have been. 69 leadership from Lindell would have been the tops amongst their top 60 men. So they badly needed to add that. They suffer the same issue in the crease. Thomas Grace was a good pickup, but let's be honest, he's at best a top 10 to 15 kind of starter. He's not going to steal too many games for them.
Right.
Elvis may turn into that for them, but he's young as well, so he's got to build up his resume. And then up front, still a pretty young team. I mean, Perron was a great signing and franchise player, but otherwise still a very, very young lineup overall.
Looking at what some of the targets went in UFA, he got Perron UFA, didn't he? Or no, he franchised him.
He got Grice in UFA.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay.
That's right.
It's looking pretty good. Yeah, it's astonishing how quickly Ian's turned things around, but he hasn't done it by fluke. He's done it with drafting and by making some really good picks. I think his nice guy persona sort of lowers people's defenses, and then he takes advantage of that. So he's not actually a nice guy. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so good so fast and leaving me behind. As usual, just like last year, very strong. And if they don't sort of go all the way this year, Ian shouldn't panic because he is on the right track. Very cool. All right, we are on the one team is in a tier all by itself, but right now we're in basically the last tier. These are the best of the best teams. No real surprises. Maybe this one, Montreal, Chasm's team at number 6, just nipping on the heels of Eric in more ways than one. If you were paying attention at all last year, you know that last year was sort of the year Montreal really made its mark. Speaking of marks, Mark, why is Montreal so good? And will they go all the way this year?
Well, I know he's a little bit injured in preseason, but he'll be back, I think, to start the regular season. But Patrice Bergeron, hockey god, is due for a bounce-back Montreal season. He made a big trade for him last year, and immediately Bergeron did not fit in well for whatever reason. Chemistry problem in the room. I don't know, maybe COVID protocols, kind of like a Pierre-Luc Dubois problem in Winnipeg.
Sure.
I expect Bergeron to be a superstar for Montreal this year. Letang, leading his defense, likely his franchise player, I think, next year. And I'm looking at, what else did I look at in this team? Oh, he's got Cole Caulfield, who looks like he's not going to just rocket to the top of the development charts like maybe we thought right away, but I'm sure he's still going to be a sniper of the future.
What other... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but his other big prospect, or big name prospect that I recognize anyway, Velarde, I'm kind of wondering why we haven't heard much from him, and wondering. I think Caulfield is his new number one if he wants to re-rate his rankings.
I love how Caulfield is his 20th rated forward, and he has a scoring of 80. Like, not a bad. I'm like looking. I'm like, that does not look right at all. Eric, what's I mean, largely you got to think so far. Chasm has the best goaltending depth of the teams we've seen so far. Is that responsible for why he's so high in the standings?
Yeah, that's for sure a big chunk of it. He's got the 5th best goaltending, 6th best forwards, and 8th best defense by these humble rankings. But I would argue that this rankings math is underrating this team. I think I'm gonna be bold here. I think this is the team to beat in the Canadian Conference. Reason being, in large part, Grubauer, 99 style control rating.
So he's coming to the stadium in very fancy suits.
Yes. Yeah, fedoras abound. Right. And if you're looking at the forwards and defense, I think this is Rockies plus. Many of the same attributes as Banff has, but with a little bit more experience and a little bit more finish. You've got on defense, Letang and Chara, super experienced. Myers and Ekholm, no slouches themselves, all very skilled players. Their bottom pairing solid. Like, I
forgot
cool.
Chara. I thought Thornton and Marlowe were old. Chara's 43 with 90. Oh man, that 92 DF. Just shocking. He's going to toss people around. That is a big defensive team, by the way, except for Letang. Very cool. Yeah, it's nice to see Chasm do well. Although I'm not happy to see that I traded him Vucal. And then Foucault immediately decided to get a shutout in the other league after not playing for 8 years. That's great. And he's injured right now. So I don't know about that, Kaz. I thought you would treat my my goalies that I toss aside like used garbage. You would treat them a little better. Okay, I think we are starting to short on time, so let's keep it rolling. Eric, I'm glad you're still here because we have your team next. The Nova Scotia Schooners are in the top 5. Whoop-oo. The Schooners are only 5 out of 29. What's Eric going to do? Eric, why are you number 5? And I bet you're going to tell us why you're sad you're number 5, even though you have the best forwards, the 3rd best defense, and top 10 goaltending.
Minor correction, I have the 2nd best forwards.
Wait a minute, how do you have the best forwards and Kucherov and Taves aren't even...
The second best forwards.
Oh, the 2nd best forwards.
Yeah, I'm down 1 from last season when I did have the best.
Right.
Goaltending is the big question mark for me this season. Tuukka Rask has very respectable stats as far as individual games go, but endurance 69, durability 68. So that's going to hold me back from contending for the Commissioner's Trophy in the regular season. I guarantee that. Probably see a lot of starts for young Kevin Lankinen and his 47 experience. Mm-hmm. So it could be a long season. In all honesty, this I'll call it right now. I've built this team for the playoffs. That's all I care about. I will happily lose games if I stay healthy doing it. So there's going to be some load management. I'm going to be very unpopular with my fans.
As if people couldn't dislike you more. Please tell me Eric's not going to win for a 3rd time. I mean, I was very supportive of him on his first win, pretty supportive of him on his second win. We can't let him win again, can we?
This is the only team I didn't really make notes on, other than I just said I feel so bad that Kucherov and Taves didn't get a rating.
And Clefbaum. That's terrible. Don't forget about Clefbaum.
I didn't even think about Clefbaum.
Yeah.
Rask is skating in real life, so he looks like he's going to come back. Yeah, everyone would love to see something horrible happen to the Schooners. Unfortunately, Eric has has got enough depth and talent that it's probably impossible for that to happen. But
Eric, I want you to know, if you win your first 6 or 7 games and I put you as number 1, I have at least 2 GMs threatening to quit the league. So they're just like, no, I can't handle this. Give me some hope here. Let him go on a three-game skid or something like that. Yep, there is a reason that Eric has won 2 championships back-to-back. Pretty amazing. And unfortunately for us, he is poised for a third. The only sort of respite I get from that thought is that it'll make the summit that much more interesting. But let's make it other type of interesting. Eric, best of luck, but not like you need it.
But not really.
Number 4, actually, guys, I changed my mind. This is the most surprising rating to me, and it's also surprising because like he only jumped a few spots from last year's rating. I can't think of a team that had sort of worse puck luck, if you want to look at it that way, because we've got the Buckaroos at number 4, ahead of Eric, ahead of Chasm, ahead of Guy, ahead of Ian. Mark, what makes the Buckaroos such a strong preseason candidate?
Well, obviously Sam left his team in half decent shape, and JD has just taken it that extra step further.
Absolutely, make the Buckaroos great again.
But my first note was Mike Smith? ? I guess.
What? That's like Mike Smith of the ye old Hamburg Gladiators fame.
I don't remember. I was like, I thought Mike Smith retired. I didn't realize he was still playing.
Of the Sim,
I was trying
Mike Smith.
I was trying to remember who Mike Smith even plays for in the other league. Apparently, he's one of the best goalies in the SICHL. So
he is.
That's obviously buoying his rating in the power rankings.
I know Carter Hart had a bad year, but Carter Hart at 55 is laughable. Zachary Call has never played in the NHL up until like a week ago, and he is like 10 points higher than him. Yeah, this is crazy.
A lot of hate for Carter Hart, but then JT Miller. I mean, another one of the best ratings in the league.
Okay.
But anyway, seriously, Portland does have a good solid team, like Dylan Larkin's up there. I think they're, especially in the weaker conference, they're gonna do some damage, and they got Seth Jarvis coming along nicely for next year or two.
Pretend I didn't hear that comment.
So expect the Buckaroos to be in the top 10.
Very cool.
To be a top 10 fixture, I think, in the power rankings.
You guys can expect an all-world conference preseason power rankings next year. Thank you very much. Eric, it appears that Joel Eriksson Ek is moonlighting as Batman, and unfortunately he ran into Bane because he is basically dead for about 3 months. But aside from that, what do you see about the Buckaroos that you like so much?
Yeah, aside from that, and it's worth mentioning that the power rankings did not take injuries into account, so
right.
That would, that's the third best forward. That's going to knock them down the standings a little bit, I think. But beyond that, impressive forward depth, if not elite talent. But the strength of this team is in net and on the blue line. That is all due respect to our esteemed commish here, but I think this is the best young blue line in the league. It's going to be very interesting to see how this team operates with the expansion draft. I think this might be our Nashville Predators that opts for the 8 skaters as opposed to the 7 forward, 3 defense.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen teams with better defensive ratings, but in terms of like overall depth, and yeah, you nailed it. The goaltending tandem is probably the best we've seen so far, and it's nice to see JD's team up so high. We'll see if the Sim decides to kick him in the you-know-what like they did last year. Every power rankings, I'm like, I don't know what to make of this. They should not be here. They should be up there. So, JD, just to let you know, we think very highly of you, regardless of what happens with the Sim. So congratulations there. You've got a good young team. Just watch out for Bane, and you will be fine. All right, guys, we got 3 more to go. Let's power through. We've almost got it. Next up, boo. Boo. Next up, we've got the Havana Revolution. Boo. Mark, why are the Havana Revolution constantly haunting my nightmares?
Well, I think there was a time when you were both basement dwellers together. Did that ever happen?
Well, I was getting to the finals while he may have been a basement dweller. So we've basically trading places, right?
Trading spaces.
Yeah, exactly. We're basically Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so congratulations to the Havana Revolution on their savvy signing of former first-round Express pick Dustin Brown for
nice
big
payday.
money. So will he be the franchise player, or will it be Brent Burns next year? That's going to be his toughest decision to make. I think he's got far and away the best offensive team in the league. He is the new London Monarchs, I guess. I don't know. Like, so much offense. His prospect pool is a bright spot for the rest of us, because I'm looking at his prospect pool and going, yeah. So maybe he'll be back in the basement with you again, or
in like 10,
maybe
in 10 years when McDavid and Draisaitl aren't the best players in the league.
Well, by the time the Gladiators are making the finals again, Havana's going to be gone.
Yay! I look forward to that time period. Eric, anything else to say about the Revolution?
Yeah, Jeff's put a very good team together. Weirdly, Hellebuck is probably the question mark on this team, because he's the opposite of what most of these other teams have had. His ratings are not actually that impressive, but his endurance is 88, his durability is 92.
Yeah, okay.
So he's got about as ironclad a starter as you could really hope for in this league.
Right.
But, that's also probably not a guy that's going to steal too many games. So it's going to really depend on the rest of this team. Pulling in Oilers and outscoring everybody else consistently, and then just staying healthy. Same kind of issue that I'm running up against.
Jeff made it to the finals, lost to Eric, which we're all very sad about, except Eric. But we could easily see Jeff making it back to it, and it just makes me sick that I just know every other week I'm going to have to put Jeff very high in the preseason, or no, not in the preseason, in the regular power rankings. But if he has a bad start, I'm putting him very low, because that'll be the only time I can probably do that. Way to go, Jeff. Really good team, and we hope to see you at the summit next year. And I mean that. I do.
With cigars.
Number two, Mark, we finally got to your team, and it took a while. We needed to get the ladder out. Wasn't big enough. We had to go back and get the bigger ladder, and we had to extend the ladder to get all the way near the top. And what's crazy is that there's another team that's even better than yours. I don't quite understand it. Eric, we've got a pretty good team here, it would frighten me if I had to worry about playing him in the playoffs or really in any kind of competitive facet here. Why are the Express so good, and why is it because of Andrei Vasilevsky?
Yeah, hit the nail on the head. This is a team that is, let me just double check my numbers here. Yeah, the third best goaltending in the league. Mm-hmm. And that's on the strength of Vasilevsky and Michael Hutchinson as the backup. So you can tell just how much better Vasilevsky is, according to the sim, than all but like two other goalies.
Right.
Total workhorse as well, so he should be able to play him for all 82 games. That is a jinx. I hope he gets injured. Defense, he's got the second best defensive young blue line, I would say, after
Eric, quick.
Second best.
What?
Second best.
Hang on a second. Who is Connor Murphy, and why does he have a 97 DF? And
this is my point.
This is just outrageous.
This is my point.
Connor Murphy, number one defenseman for the other league's Blackhawks.
Hysterical.
Oh, okay.
Just hysterical. But the strength of this team compared to Portland, for example, kind of an inverse thing. Great goaltending, but it's power up front instead of on the blue line.
Right. Okay.
DeBrincat's an incredible find.
He's going to score goals.
Wheeler was a really savvy pickup. He got him for a pretty reasonable price. Pasternak, unbelievable talent. Yeah, all things being relative.
20, it wasn't a $50 million contract.
Take into account the signing.
This is the new reasonable mark. We've got inflation going on here.
27 million.
20 mil is pretty good.
No, 27. You forgot about the signing bonus.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So you've got Killorn as well. I believe that was a Schooners draft pick, was he not? So yeah, there's some solid players here, and then young Jack Hughes, solid this year. He's going to be just terrifying as early as next year, but certainly down the line. So Yeah, good team. Maybe a little overrated by the emphasis on goaltending in the power rankings here. I'd be surprised if they're in the top spot. Like I said, I called my shot. I think it's going to be the Millionaires for the Canadian Conference, but still very scary. Definitely a top 3 team.
And he has a player named Jonas Siegenthaler, which is a great name. And Jacob Moverrare. Some great names here. Mark, your team is so good it makes me sad. It's depressingly good.
I'm sorry, Henry.
Don't apologize. You've done a terrific job.
I finally felt like I had a team worthy of spending $20 million on a single player in
right.
free agency. And
you do have $126 million, so I think you can afford it.
It's not getting you any interest, man. Spend the money.
He already did. And Mark is another really good team that has all his, and I can't believe I'm saying this, how many good teams have all their draft picks. The Summit and the season this year is going to be really interesting. Mark, don't tell us what you're going to do. I want it to be a secret.
On that note, Mark, do you want to buy some more draft picks?
Ooh. I offered you, what did I offer you? $30 million for all of the Aces draft picks. I think that was actually more than you paid for them.
It's not a depreciating asset.
It's not. Do you guys want a room? Should I?
Let's sidebar this.
All right, guys.
I don't remember exactly what the number was, but I offered you more. I offered you $1 million more than you paid for them.
$34 million. Yeah.
And you could have made $1 million.
That's true.
Easily.
Yeah. Foolish of me.
Very foolish.
All right, guys. So, the cream of the crop, the last team, we finally made it. The number one pick. You've been watching since the beginning. Thank you for watching us. We certainly enjoyed doing it. The number one team by a pretty, well, actually, they're pretty close to Mark. But we've got the number one team for goaltending. They're 7-7 on forwards and defense. So, Eric, why the Riders? Is it their 100 players? Is it they have a million ways to score? Is it their amazing defense? Is it the fact that Varlamov has incredible ratings and 91 style control? Is it the fact that Sylvain knows hockey really well and has won before? Or D, all of the above?
D, you're hired, sir. You hit it all. The goaltending depth is a big deal. It's not just that Varlamov's the best goalie in the league this year. It's that he's got a really good backup in Rene and a really good number 3 in Shortridge. The defense is fine. You know, it's like you said, it's the 7th best defense, but there isn't really any weakness to it. These are all guys that have respectable puck handling, passing, and or defensive ratings. It's the forwards, though, that is very scary. This is actually an underrated forward group, according to the rankings, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, you can just look at the scoring ratings on these guys. It's crazy. He's got guys in the 80s right down to his third line, which is kind of a theme for the Riders, right? We've been talking about them for years, that they always run 3, sometimes even 4 scoring lines, and this year shouldn't be any different from that. So very scary team. Should very clearly at least a top 2 team in the World Conference. I think it's going to be them and Havana neck and neck.
Just eat it, you guys, that the top team is a World Conference team. Are you guys going to be okay? And
I don't think that's accurate, by the way. Just
well, you're the one that did the ratings. And Sylvain has all his draft picks. What is with all these good teams having draft picks? It's like you can have your cake and eat it too. Mark, are you scared of facing Sylvain? Admit it, you are.
Sylvain is probably the scariest team because, well, one thing you didn't mention, I got a fruit fly in here. He's got some scary defensive forwards as well, which I personally quite enjoy having, which I don't feel like I have enough of them ever. He's got Kirill Kaprizov, early favorite for the Solani.
Yep.
Yeah, Varlamov got a decent re-rate, let's be honest. He got a couple of big signings in Tanev and Jamie Benn. Yeah, it's a solid team.
What I love is seeing players like Troy Terry or John Marino or Kaprizov drafted really, really late. It emphasizes that, look, most players in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds aren't going to play, but every year or every other year, there's going to be one where not only are they going to make your team, they're going to have an impact. Kaprizov was picked 137th overall in the 5th round in 2015, and Sylvain, already a good team, has his highest scoring player from someone that, you know, normally when you're drafting, you're like, 137th, who knows, right? So it just goes to show that Sylvain knows all aspects of the sim and drafting, which frightens me because, again, he's the number 1 rated team and he has all his draft picks. You're not supposed to be able to have your cake and eat it too. But Sylvain did. He also did a great job on the podcast reviewing the draft. And like Mark, I'm going to pay close attention to the next one and make sure if we could do that one before the summit, that would be great. Whew, gentlemen, we have reached the end. Thank you both very much for joining us. Thank you all the viewers for watching. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? Let's go with Eric first on the upcoming season, what you hope to see. And anything you want to say to the league? Eric, maybe don't say anything to the league.
Yeah, I'll take this rare occasion to not toot my own horn and just say that it's a pleasure and an honor to do this podcast or this video power ranking with you fellas again. Tip of the hat to Mark and Mike for running the best fantasy sports league in the entire world.
Yeah,
not overstating that. I'm certain. No. Really building a community here. Other than that, I hate all of you. I'm really looking forward to beating you, and good day.
It's a good thing you did it in that order. Yeah, Mark, I belong to other fantasy leagues, and they piss me off. Because like every time I'm like doing it, I'm like, I just want to go back to SICHL and look at people's draft pages or whatever. Mark, any final thoughts for the GMs watching and any upcoming thoughts on the season?
Well, I will echo the thanks, especially to Mike Franceschini, my partner in crime these past decades. Yeah, we make a good team, and yeah, I'm just excited to have all you guys in the league, though. Really, like Henry, Eric, you guys are.
Me?
Yeah. As an actor and actor and storyteller, I like a good villain. I just like interesting characters. People who really commit to their roles. Henry as hapless bottom feeder, Eric as super villain. But just
I'm trying.
It's honestly like after we're in season 24. We're about to have a second Super Summit next summer. I'm not going to spoil anything that we may be planning. I think it's going to be fun. I think everybody should try to come.
Agreed.
Mike's going to open up registration pretty soon, I think, on that. I mean, we have merch. We have guys are buying jerseys. This is, it's crazy. We're all crazy, but you know what? Beyond. Life is all about the stories we tell ourselves, and this is a great story that we're making up, and we're all having fun. And what the heck, I love it.
Agreed. Between my wedding next June and the summit, I'm pretty much going to have the best summer of my life. I can't wait. No, I'm not going to pick between the two. Nope.
A little from column A.
Way more excited, but I am also excited for the summit too. What Mark said.
Room in your heart for two.
The league really took off when we started sort of everyone pitching in and doing different features and Twitter and sort of engaging on a level beyond what I think anyone really expected. But big kudos to Mark and Mike. It is a lot of hard work that we would not wish upon anyone. So please, if you're willing or eager to help in any way, I know always draft time or logistics or whatever, volunteer your time. You with these kinds of things, you usually get out of what you put into it. And ever since I started the power rankings, I've loved the league more than I ever thought possible. It's just the best. So thank you both for joining us. This is myself, Henry Skey, GM of the Gladiators. We've got Mark, GM of the Express, and of course Eric, GM of your championship Schooners. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.